Food fuels our bodies and interacts with every single cell in the human organism. Junk food, which contains ultra-processed ingredients, is now linked to obesity, depression, and other diseases. So, why is it still so cheap, and why is it so easy to buy? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. There's growing evidence that ultra-processed foods are responsible for a whole host of diseases, including heart attacks and cancer. And consuming them actually encourages us to eat more and gain weight. Roundtable's Jen Carswell has been investigating how to identify UPFs and why you might want to avoid them.
Look at this spread. They're the sorts of goodies you'd see at a party, you might pick up on the go. Well, I'm about to make you look at them a whole lot differently, and that's because they're all examples of ultra-processed foods. Now, there's a very long scientific definition of what that means, but broadly speaking, it's food that's wrapped in plastic and has ingredients that you wouldn't find in your kitchen at home. Let me explain how the process works. This is an orange. We all recognize it. It gives us vitamins and other nutrients, and when we eat it, we feel full. Now, this orange is processed into orange juice. It has a few vitamins, we drink it, we don't really feel full, and it probably spikes our blood sugar, but overall, it's not bad for us. Now, finally, we get to this. Imagine that these leftover peels are crushed and turned into natural orange flavor. There's no nutritional value left, and it doesn't look much like an orange at all. It requires chemicals and sugar to make it taste nice and look like real food. This is ultra-processed food. There are many scientific studies that show UPFs are linked to inflammatory diseases like Crohn's disease, metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, depression, anxiety, obesity, which increases the risk of heart attacks and stroke. And that is because these foods are high in calories, so they make you put on weight. They have little nutritional value, so your body is missing the key building blocks it needs to stay healthy. They're full of sugar, so verging on addictive. And when you eat them, you don't feel full, so you eat even more, and then the circle repeats. In the UK, a study found ultra-processed foods account for 57% of our diet, which is even higher for children and people in lower socioeconomic areas. In the US, they make up 72% of Americans' diets on average. So just eat these instead, right? Fruit and vegetables, whole foods. Well, they're more expensive to buy, often they need to be cooked, which takes time and energy, and it's just frankly not that convenient. And sometimes eating anything, something, is better than just not eating at all. So don't feel bad if you'd rather eat this than this. But if you can, make better informed choices.
Well, let's meet our guests. In Vienna is Dr. Mary Ryan. She's a consultant endocrinologist and professor at the Bon Secours Hospital in Limerick, and that's in the west of Ireland. In the studio here with me, we have Professor Karol Sikora. He's a clinical oncologist and former chief of the World Health Organization's cancer program. Dr. Anna Hemming is the founder of the Thames Skin Clinic. It offers weight management programs that are regulated by the UK's Care Quality Commission. And Rhiannon Lambert is a registered nutritionist, author, and founder of Rhitrition Plus, a nutrition company in London. Very warm welcome to Roundtable to all of you. Karol, I'll come to you first. How concerned are you as a medical professional about this creeping surge of ultra-processed food?
There's no doubt that diet is very important in the cause of cancer and other health problems, cardiovascular disease, stroke, high blood pressure, and so on. And fast foods or ultra-processed foods are very damaging if they're your only diet. A small amount's not going to matter, but if your diet is totally that, and the food industry has gone overboard to try and promote that sort of stuff, there's more profit to be had than selling basic foodstuffs, unprocessed food. And that's the problem. So for cancer, we know that colorectal cancer, breast and prostate cancer, there's something there, and today's paper in the British Medical Journal points that out. The evidence is not great because getting dietary histories is very difficult from people, but there's clear enough evidence to suggest that ultra-processed food is damaging to people's health.
And Anna, it's absolutely everywhere. If we were to look in any of our cupboards now, it's there. We go to a shop, it's there. And the end result is you're dealing with people all the time who are struggling with weight issues.
That's right. We see it literally everywhere. You walk down the street, there's a convenience store. I don't think there'll be a single thing in there that wasn't ultra-processed. And if people don't have the option to buy something and they're hungry, they're going to grab the nearest, most available thing. They will also want to have the thing that they want the flavours of and the texture and the taste. And in these ultra-processed food, the ingredients are not simple. You look at the packets and you can tell an ultra-processed food from the number of ingredients that go into them that make them more appealing to the taste buds. So it's a big problem.
Rhiannon, just talk me through just how prevalent this stuff is in our daily lives, because there doesn't seem to be any escaping it.
No, there doesn't. It's quite worrying. About 60% of our diets now are full of ultra-processed foods, and even more concerning and alarmingly so for myself as a healthcare professional and a mother, children now consume even higher than that in terms of a percentage. So it is everywhere, and the ingredients list is long. What we don't realise is that every food that we eat from scratch contains something called its food matrix. So if you take the example of a carrot by itself may have about 140,000 amazing different pathways and amazing antioxidants, chemicals that are good for us. But people aren't consuming carrots, they're consuming extracts of carrots, then powdered versions of carrots mixed in with other versions of food and then marketed as healthy. That's where the deception comes in, because someone may think they're getting vegetables because it's got a claim on a packet which doesn't actually add up to the raw food in its original state. So most of us have grown up seeing healthy food, which is actually ultra-processed food.
Mary, on the front line, you're dealing with people who have diabetes, various different health issues caused by diet. Just how prevalent are these problems caused by what we're eating?
Oh, hugely. So we unfortunately have got now an exponential risk in type 2 diabetes throughout the developed world. And the problem with that is that these ultra-processed foods, as your people have said there, they're high in sugar, they're high in salt, they're high in emulsifiers, in additives, they're high in saturated and trans fats, which are very bad for you. But all of these cause abdominal obesity, and your fat cell is quite inflammatory. It's causing plaque in your arteries. So as we said, it's increasing diabetes, heart disease and strokes, but it's increasing diabetes. And it does that because the insulin that's produced from your pancreas to absorb the blood sugar, it interferes with that, causes insulin resistance. And as a result of that, then the glucose is not getting into your cells. So you're feeling tired, you're feeling weak, you're going to the toilet a lot, you're drained in energy. And that glucose will damage your eyes, your kidneys, the nerves to your feet, and your heart. So I'm very alarmed because, as Rhiannon said, research would say 60 to even 80% of foods in some disadvantaged areas, because these foods are cheap. So that ultra-processed diet, which has so much of what we don't want, what we do advocate is the Mediterranean diet, but the ultra-processed diet has everything we don't want. And, it's fine to have 2 treats a week, but we've got to get back to eating healthily, because type 2 diabetes is something we can prevent. And if we can prevent obesity, prevent abdominal overweight, we can prevent diabetes. But the way we're going is very, very concerning. And as you said, not only diabetes, but heart disease, stroke, colon cancer, because of that low fiber intake, you're getting too many toxins, and also breast cancer. So there's so much. I'm really concerned as an endocrinologist and somebody who looks after diabetes with the increase in ultra-processed food throughout the world, and the fact that they're pushing it and that it's cheap and that it's being marketed, as Rhiannon said, as being healthy, when in actual fact it's not. And we're seeing it in breads, biscuits, pastries, sugary drinks. It's all over, and it's cheap and being marketed as being very attainable, and that's a big worrying factor for me.
Carol, I want to take a look at a study which was done in Australia, Deakin University, published in the British Medical Journal. UPF's ultra-processed food raises the risk of 32 harmful health outcomes, including cancer, diabetes, heart disease, as you said, and depression. 21% greater risk of dying young, 50% risk of dying from heart disease, 22% greater risk of depression, and a 50% increased risk of anxiety and poor sleep. I mean, the Western world, we've never had so much food, and it's terrible for us, this stuff.
The whole food culture has changed. It's partly due to marketing, but it's also, as we've heard, people find it delicious, especially young people, children, and they get addicted to it. It's salty, it's sweet, and it has no texture. And that's part of the problem. And as we've heard also, a carrot has a lot of good things in it that you are just missing in processed food. I think the mechanism by which it's harmful differ for the different diseases. For cancer, I think the colorectal cancer, as we've heard from Mary, is due to the lack of fibre. The prostate and breast is probably inducing changes in hormonal levels, very complex ratios of different hormones that are not natural because of eating this food. So the mechanism of the cardiovascular disease is something else. So it's very difficult to tease apart the factors that are involved. We will tease them apart in the end, but let's hope we can get people to a natural diet rapidly. You know, to look at a marketplace in a third world, in a developing country, fantastic, it's healthy. Rural Africa is full of healthy foods. Rural England is not full of healthy food. It's a corner shop selling fast foods, processed foods.
And Anna, this is being driven by predominantly between 12 and 15 food companies on a global scale, and they are making billions and billions of dollars off this.
Yes, yeah, I mean, you would hope that they come to see some sense at some point in the fact that they're actually driving a massive issue in human health. And if they could potentially put maybe some more realistic advertising across, use some of their profits to help in the wellness sector, making maybe some impact into real food and into unprocessed food that people have on their shelves would be amazing, absolutely amazing.
Rhiannon, I listened to a British doctor on this, Chris Van Tulliken, and he had spoken to an expert in Brazil, and she had used the phrase, not ultra-processed foods, she said that they should be called industrially formulated edible substances. That's quite a deconstruction of a word, isn't it? I mean, to put together, you know, they're taking what was originally a food substance, adding all these emulsifiers, additives, flavorings, colours. You know, it's terrible.
It's a complication that has grown far out of proportion. So originally, convenience foods came about because shelf lives were extended for people that could afford food. It would sit longer in your cupboard. We have to remember we still have the issue here of helping people that aren't from income backgrounds where they can afford certain produce to be able to eat and get nutrition from fortified items. However, the problem is, like you said, the deception, the way that a lot of these items are marketed and they entice you in. It's almost become part of our culture, stemming all the way through. It's systemic, from childhood all the way to adult life, that these convenience items are everyday items and they should not be. The word that you said there, I can't quote it back to you, but the language that we use around food is incredibly important.
Industrially formulated.
Industrially formulated. See, in my clinic, and I have a team of psychologists, dietitians, nutritionists that I work with, we tend to find the language is crucial. And perhaps because the system that classifies processed foods called NOVA go from minimally processed all the way up to ultra-processed foods. If we were to rename it industrially processed items, then people would actually look at the food in a different way, potentially, than just simply processed. Processed is a can of chickpeas. It's chickpeas have been picked, they're put in a can, therefore they are processed. That doesn't make them bad. If they were ultra-processed, they would have had further manipulation, sugar, emulsifiers, fats, saturated fats added to them. And that's the confusion. Language is very important.
Rhiannon, you mentioned NOVA. Well, the NOVA food classification system seeks to classify processed foods into 4 groups to highlight their degree of processing. The UN highlighted this system as a way that people can make informed food choices. So Group 1 comprises unprocessed or minimally processed foods, and that's fish, meat and eggs. Group 2 includes processed culinary ingredients like honey, sugar and oil. Group 3 represents processed foods, including bread and salted meats. And Group 4 is for ultra-processed foods that include sugary and salted snacks. Mary, when you are speaking to your patients and clients and you coach them through and you talk them through their diet and their habits, are they shocked to find out that years and years of eating this kind of stuff is why they're sitting with you?
Absolutely. So when I'm dealing with a diabetic patient, and I'm, the huge part of dealing with a patient with diabetes is getting them to eat healthily and to educate them, and not just them, but their whole family has to help them by eating healthily. So we educate them on the Mediterranean diet, which has been shown to reduce a heart disease. So, for example, a diet that's rich in fibre, it's not processed. You have your legumes, you've got your porridge in the morning, you've got your loads of your vegetables, your good pulses, and your extra virgin oil. So we would say start off with porridge in the morning, high fibre. Add your Greek yogurt, not your low-fat yogurt. We don't want it processed. We want Greek yogurt, and which is a good source of protein, calcium, low in lactose, and then maybe blueberries, which are full of antioxidants. Then we want a salad in the middle of the day, just 2 slices of, and it's so easy to have good food. Porridge bread is easy to make. Your brown bread is easy to make. And then in the evening, you have your half plate of veg, your quarter plate of your fish, your oily fish or your meat, and then your quarter plate of your brown rice or your potato or your brown pasta. So we're constantly, asking people to eat healthily, trying to tell them that it's a lot easier and healthier to eat organically and healthy as opposed to going off and getting the takeaway foods and buying in the takeaway dinners. So we're encouraging self-love, patients to love themselves by eating healthily, and also to make healthy choices at that trolley. I think that's very important. So when we all do that shop once a week, we just bring in the healthy things. We can go out for the 2 little treats of the process, but we really need to start with the trolley so that it's not there looking at us, tempting us when we're tired. And remember, we're all human. So that is sort of what we are saying in our clinics, and our dietitians are brilliant with language, and our nutritionists. And bringing the patient with us, telling them you have to love yourself. This is something you're going to have for the next 50 years. And we really you've got to help us with diet. Yes, we'll give you medication. You need to do exercise, but you need to start eating healthily. And eating healthily, eating the good Mediterranean diet is so easy. And you've just got to learn to do it. And by all means, you can have your treats, but you limit them. And I think that's the way forward. And I think that's the way schools need to go. And we as educators need to bring and educate the public and bring them along with us. I think that's very, very important.
Karol, have we reached a stage now where perhaps you would like to see some regulation or government involvement on this?
It's very difficult. Nanny states can regulate, but the difficulty is it's relatively cheap per calorie. And that means if you're a poor family, single mother, 3 children living in a council high-rise, for example, you've got almost just unemployment benefits. That's all you have to spend. You want to feed the kids so they don't go to school hungry. You're going to use processed food. And that's the problem. We've got to think of a way of somehow reducing the penalty for having healthy foods, but there is a penalty. Now, I know fully processed food, ultra-processed foods are also expensive, but per calorie, they're very cheap. And they're addictive in the sense the children like, crisps, for example, salt, fat, they're addictive. So getting children to be educated about good, healthy foods is probably the key. Rather than regulation, education is probably the way forward. And also trying to have a tax-based system that reduces the cost of fresh food and increases the cost of processed food.
Anna, do you think maybe a public education campaign then, or maybe TV chefs? We've seen Jamie Oliver take on sugary foods and drinks and what have you in the past. Is this maybe something that would help?
I think it has to come from across the board. I think it has to come from the education process. It has to come from the households, the parents. It has to come from the whole system, including television, advertising, how the media perceives things, social media, even putting things on the sort of kids' social media sites, the Snapchats, etc., and really trying to infiltrate the youngsters, because remember, some of the parents will not have this knowledge and they won't have the understanding. And if they don't have it, how can we expect them to bring that down to their children? I mean, not everyone grew up with a mum like looking after the allotment and bringing home whatever vegetable happened to be in season. So, it's really important that people understand that certain things are not available all year round, and you can't just sort of focus on 1 or 2 meals. You have to go with the flow with it all. But bringing it all in and making it everybody's responsibility is the way forwards.
Rhiannon, how do you feel about young people not really understanding what they're putting in their bodies? Because I've seen this with my own children, and, you would hope that more education becomes available. I mean, how do we target that audience?
It's quite heartbreaking as a parent myself, but equally as a registered nutritionist, I think this is a big problem. This comes from the fact that we have a large percentage of people now turning to social media, especially the younger generations, for health advice, and there is no regulation. So anyone can say anything. So straight away, there's the pseudoscientific messages that are out there, the misinformation, confusing the general public. Who do you go to? Who do you trust? Those are key issues when it comes to even the parents of these children who don't have the information to hand. So in my opinion, the government really has to step up here and do something about regulation and helping inform parents to help them educate the future generations. Because sadly, as much as I wish I could say it's all down to schools, it's not. A lot of this does start in the home. We've got data from the first 1,000 years that from the ages of even 0 to 2, everything a child eats, that's the most crucial time of their brain development. 0 to 2, from conception till 2 years old. Most children in this country will have already had a diet of ultra-processed foods under the age of 1. And that's just tragic, but it's because of a lack of education. So we really need to try and get more done. I completely agree.
Mary, would you agree on that point, lack of education, that, we all need to be talking about this, governments need to get involved, and we need some sort of maybe public information campaigns?
Yes, without question. In Ireland, I was part of the Obesity Task Force, and that's exactly what we did. We started educating in the schools. We proposed to the government that they tax the ultra-processed foods, and as Karol said, make the healthy foods cheaper. But I think we need to bring along those brilliant chefs and get them maybe talking, because people think that eating healthy is expensive. It's not. Your vegetables aren't expensive. Porridge is a very inexpensive cereal. Those sugary cereals that are ultra-processed are a lot more expensive. So I think we need to, all people through social media, through the TV channels, through our chefs, educate the public through our schools and say to them, it's all about self-love. It's about having us all healthy. And in doing so, you can make the healthy choices and really tell them that the porridge and the brown bread and the porridge bread, these are all easy to do, and it's best for your child, it's best for yourself. And surely since the COVID pandemic, that has been the general thing of us, loving ourselves more. And this is the way you do love yourself, is by healthy eating. And ultra-processed foods are not healthy. And I think to get that message out and to empower people to do that, I think we can do that across all strands of society if we try hard enough. And it's up to us to do it, because in doing so, we will prevent so much disease and we will have such happier, healthier populations. So we have a duty to do it.
Karol, that's a very good point, isn't it? That the impact of diet and lack of exercise. I read a statistic this week in the UK, 35% of people do no exercise whatsoever. And the end result is what you're dealing with on a daily basis.
It's frightening. Exercise is a very powerful weapon against obesity. And it's a simple equation. Stuff going in, stuff going out. It goes out by exercise. The calories go in what you eat. And so if there's more going in than going out, you're going to get bigger. And all these fancy diets are irrelevant. It's just total calories in, total calories out. People don't do enough exercise. I try and walk. I go 5 floors on a lift upstairs. The lift from the 6th floor and onwards. But, we should do more exercise, all of us. And it's very difficult sometimes in an urban environment. So I think, again, we've talked about education. Education for exercise begins at 2 years old. I mean, that's the time you have to encourage kids to walk to school, not to take the car to drive round the town with a bunch of kids in the back. They should be walking, especially now the weather's getting better.
And just one point, actually, Karol, not all calories are the same, are they?
That's true. And there are good calories and bad calories, but our nutritionist is the expert of that.
Yeah, we'll come to you with that, Rhiannon.
There's a lot of really interesting research now. I think King's College London and Professor Tim Spector's raised a really valid point here that actually you can't compare 100 calories of broccoli to 100 calories of chocolate, because our bodies utilise these calories in a different way. The more fibre the food contains versus an ultra-processed food like a Mars bar. I saw in the press recently they compared a banana to a Mars bar. It was absurd because a Mars bar is probably going to get turned into fat. It's going to cause spikes. It's got all sorts of things in. And if you're just eating an apple or a banana, that's a far superior choice because it's low in calories, it contains fibre. Again, the food matrix, it is what it is. So when we say calories, yes, I do agree, it's energy in, energy out. But the differentiating factor is how good is your diet? Because if your diet is 60% ultra-processed foods, then actually a lot of people will be disappointed calorie counting because they're not getting any results because the food they're consuming might say it's low calorie, but it's not having that impact on their body. And they're 30% inaccurate on packets.
Anna, Karol, Rhiannon and Mary, thank you all so much for your insight. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for Roundtable TRT World, and if you like what you see, please do hit that subscribe button. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, goodbye, and thank you for watching.